by the Lance Scurv show and simulcast with his platform. We got a great power pack show this hour. We expect very soon to join us from another event, DHORUBA and WAHAD. As you may know, DHORUBA and WAHAD is a Muslim. He's also part of the original organizers of the Black Liberation Army. He was also part of what was known as the PANTHER 21, where the United States government, through the counterintelligence program, the FBI, illegally trumped up charges against him, where he was made to serve 18 years during the 1970s and 1980s. He also struggled along with Sundiata Kohli, Geronimo Pratt, and of course Assata Shakur, who is in Havana under the protection of the Cuban Revolution. So one of the things that we're going to talk about today, obviously, is the post-election analysis, and also want to introduce a friend to the Muslim Street with the Darfur 24, the Darfur 23. Excuse me. How can I say that? All right, Darfur 24.
It's all right.
Darfur 24. How did I get 24? Darfur 23, which was organized in 2007 on the banks of the Nile River in Khartoum, as they sought to give clarity to the issue that was going on in Darfur. So Art Mobley is going to join us, and we'll also be discussing some things there. My co-host is Hina Lotus of the Muslim Street. Say salam to everybody, Lena. Hina.
Salam, everyone.
And also joining us eventually from Chicago, our correspondent there, part of the Malcolm X Coalition, and the Crescent newsletter, Salim Abdul Khalik. He'll join us very shortly to jump in this very important and timely conversation. Before we jump into a post-analysis of the election, the United States election cycle for 2024, I want to bring our attention to a very serious matter that's at hand, and it's a urgent matter, and that's the matter of Black political prisoners in the United States. During the Joe Biden, Kamala Harris administration, they attacked one of the strongest leaders that we've had over the last 5 decades. His name is Chairman Omali Yeshitela. He heads an organization that he founded in St. Petersburg, Florida, called Uhuru. And it's under the platform of the Uhuru that he's been able to bring a true revolutionary analysis to our struggle around the question of reparations, around the questions of what the context of true revolution looks like. Omali hails from Oakland, California, where he was part of the original organized committee of the Black Panther Party with Bobby Seale, Lil Bobby Hutton, and of course, Huey P. Newton. So let me set this up. What we thought the counterintelligence program of the United States government was a has-been is a now, right? So they targeted the organization Uhuru, led by, as I stated, Chairman Omali Yeshitela, whose platform has been the same for over 4 or 5 decades. Consistent Marxist analysis. He has written many books, one called Equilibrium, which I suggest everybody pick up, but kind of sets his ethos as it relates to worldwide African liberation. And for some particular reason, the United States government and Kamala Harris, Joe Biden regime decided to go after him and his organization. They stormtrooped their organization headquarters in St. Louis, as well as simultaneously in St. Petersburg, Florida, with flashbang grenades and at the wee hours of the morning. You know how they do that style of action. And now he faces legal issues that are going to come in the culmination, I think, during the month of December, less than 30 days away, where they could be indicting him, sentencing him, etc. This is a public hanging of who I call the last man standing. It is Omali Yeshitela and his analysis, his consistent analysis of African liberation that has been at the forefront of the thinking part or the Black intelligentsia part of our movement. And for Joe Biden and the Kamala Harris regime to come after him was solely in the context of the illegal proxy war that the United States government is fighting where? In Ukraine, right? So, so this issue surrounds that. And what they're convicting him of is being a foreign agent of the Russian government. Total hype, total propaganda. And we say if they're going to do that, then they should convict AIPAC of being a foreign agent of Israel. It's the same, and he hasn't received any money from the Russian government. But we know AIPAC's position as they have bought the entire Congress of the United States, including the Congressional Black Caucus. For the fans out in the listening audience who sway the way of the Black petty bourgeoisie. So I just want to call attention to the plight of Chairman Omali Yeshitela and what is known as the Uhuru Three, that we come to their aid, that we continue to heighten this contradiction by the United States government as they attempt to continue to either assassinate, jail, and silence true Black leadership. Our Mobley and I talked about this yesterday, and I want to kind of jump in and kind of discuss how we really need to bring more focus on Black political prisoners.
Well, thank you, Malik. And Omali's case and situation, I think, is not equivalent to AIPAC so much as it is, as you say, he's not receiving compensation and any kind of communications with any agents of Russia. And that's not even the accusation. The accusation was just arbitrary and just thrown out. So I think that it has already been refuted, and some of it is actually being unwound as we speak. But we've got a number of other political prisoners around the country. Of course, Mumia, Jamal, and even H. Rap Brown. H. Rap Brown is in fact still incarcerated here in Arizona and down in Tucson, and he is still being held in federal prison. So I would like to see more of an organized effort on the part of African Americans as we take on this new effort now that we've woken ourselves from the 2024 election and getting feedback from all across the board, sisters and brothers from all over the country and all over the world that realize that we've got to do this for ourselves. We can't be dependent on anyone else to push our agenda forward or push an agenda forward for us. We have to do that ourselves. So organizing around the idea of a Black Agenda 2025 or 2030, whatever anybody wants to call it, it does have to be something that we create ourselves, and we push forward issues that pertain to what we want, what we have a feeling of priority around. So I'd flip it back to you right now, Malik. If we can discuss either of those issues anymore, let me know. Okay.
Yeah. So H. Rap Brown, now known as Imam Jamil El-Amin, who coined the term Black Power back in the 1960s, is another victim of this COINTELPRO. And we have to, as a community, begin to wisely, put pressure on the next administration to not only release Imam Jamil, but also Mumia, also take the pressure off of the situation that was reapplied during the or heightened during the Obama administration on the side of Shakur. It was the Obama administration who had a Black Attorney General by the name of Eric Holder, As soon as he took office, one of his first acts was to name Assad al-Shakur as public enemy #1 on the FBI's most wanted list. Right before Obama left office, when he was lame duck, the fall of 2016, he planned a trip to Havana, where he spoke in Havana Square with Che Guevara's mural in the background. This was a play, a secret play to capture our sister Assad, who, by the way, is Muslim. Now, you might say, well, Malik, how did you come to that conclusion, right? Well, as you may well know, whenever a president of the United States moves to give a speech anywhere, there is a front team that goes out 2-3 weeks before him, no matter where it is, right? They lock down cell phones, they lock down communication, they're knocking on doors. They did that down in Havana. This is already documented. And as you may well know, the Secret Service, along with the CIA, was a part of that advance team that, under the cover of him giving a speech, Obama, in Havana Square in the fall of 2016, they were looking for Assad al-Shakur. This is this kind of criminal hypocrisy that's on the play from the United States government, and we see it again in the case of Chairman Omali Yeshitilla. Last thing I'll say before I introduce another guest that has joined us, a friend of the Muslim Street, Brother Salim Abdul Khalid, and that is Art mentioned. The Black people in particular, but liberalism is on play in general. They started this probably about 6 or 8 months ago, putting a fear campaign into people around this Project 2025 by the Heritage Foundation. They're good at putting fear, right? Fear puts people, especially the former slaves, right, on a defensive, into a trauma. And that's all you hear them talking about, even though they don't know what they're talking about, they understand the fear, right? So in the revolutionary movement, we play offense, not defense so much, right? We call out the defense, but we also want to play offense. So as Project 2025 was launched by the Heritage Foundation, we launched blackproject2025.com. Right, and it is on that platform that we will begin to address our next stance forward when the next administration comes in. And so, actually, for us to make the play during the election, it was unnecessary, obviously, because the Oakland Raiders football team, along with the Philadelphia Eagles football team, along with the Kansas City Chiefs football team, couldn't help Kamala Harris in this last election. So that would have been a moot point, and it's good that we still have that in our bag. Having said that, I want to jump in and have Hina, our co-host with the Muslim Street, ask a few questions and engage the audience.
Thank you so much, Malik. Yeah, I had several questions actually in regards to the election and the results that came out from it. What would you say we need to do at this point? Do you think the two-party system is something that we could use to still reform and move forward in terms of not just Black liberation, but also Muslim liberation, as well as taking into account the liberation of Palestine? Or is it necessary for us to work outside of the system and maybe create a third-party solution? So that was going to be my first question.
Yeah, let's jump in, Salim, and attack that.
Well, first of all, I'd like to introduce myself for those that don't know me. I'm Brother Salim Abdul Khalid, and I'm the founder of a organization and newsletter that was founded in honor of Brother Malcolm X. In his book, which I recommend that everybody get in order to understand Malcolm's positions better on politics and economics, I recommend that everybody go out and get a copy of the book By Any Means Necessary. On page 29 of that book, Malcolm made the statement after he was asked a question, would he start another newspaper after he was ostracized from the Nation of Islam. And he stated that to the news reporter that yes, he would, and he would name it the Flaming Crescent because he wanted to set the world on fire with truth. So I started, along with another brother by the name of Ilyas on the west side of Chicago some years ago, a newsletter entitled The Flaming Crescent, which would promote Malcolm's political and spiritual philosophy. Now, I'm not a political theorist. I don't have any degrees in politics or political education or anything like that. I'm just a grassroots brother trying to do my part in order to, uplift Malcolm and all of our great ancestors. My answer to the question that Sister Hina asked is, I personally believe that the American system is totally bankrupt. It's bankrupt morally, it's bankrupt financially, it's bankrupt politically, all any kind of way which you think is totally bankrupt. And I think that it needs to be scrapped for a totally new system, political system that meets the needs and aspirations of the masses of people, particularly the oppressed people, Black, whether you be Indian, no matter what race you are, we are all in the same boat. And I think that we all need to come together to attack this beast that has got his foot on all of our necks. I totally support a third party. I did not vote for Tweedledum or Tweedledee. I did not support the wolf or the fox, as Malcolm referred to them as in his book, By Any Means Necessary. I wrote in a third party candidate, you see. Yes, this thing, it needs to be scrapped and we need to start all over. America was founded upon the theft of Indian land, the back of our enslaved ancestors for 400 something years. And we'll do reparations as a result of that, as they gave reparations to the Indians, the Japanese, the Jews, and everybody else. In the 50 years that I have been participating in the voting process, I have not seen anything significant, either by the Democrats or the Republicans, done to alleviate the poverty, the police brutality, the oppression that we as Black people face in this country.
Okay, Art?
Yeah, I just wanted to jump in to say I've worked with the International Election Commission. I was asked to come to South Africa and monitor the election of Nelson Mandela when he first came out of prison. And following that, I was asked to come to Zimbabwe to also monitor elections there, and even to Guatemala. In each one of those situations, there were multiple parties. In the case of South Africa, there were 21 parties on the ballot. There were 21 people running for president at the time, and Nelson Mandela won that election. However, you see the broadened agenda there. So if you're going to play like you have a democracy, then go ahead and play like you have a democracy, and make it open so that everyone can be on the ballot that needs to be on the ballot, or that wants to be on the ballot, or that gives representation for their constituents on the ballot. But as brother said, right now the current system is definitely bankrupt because it doesn't represent itself as a democracy. It calls itself a republic, which means that they can override or overrule majority participation, majority rule, and majority outcomes by introducing something like the Electoral College, or they'll wind up having the Supreme Court vote on it, or they'll throw it back into a Congress that's a pretty closed system. So this is a charade, and it's a sham, and it doesn't represent anything that would represent us. So my solution to Sister's question would be, yeah, we need to form parties if we're going to participate in that regard, or really what we need is just a remaking of the entire system. And I think that that is what is in process right now. There will be a makeover of this system here. And I think we need to look for some outside support for things that Black people and other people of color that coalesce with Black people want to see and want to do. So I think we're definitely going to have to look towards the global South and towards other efforts around the world to move that needle forward.
Okay, Hina?
Thank you so much. Oh, go on. Oh, okay. Sorry about that. No, I was just going to say thank you so much. I really appreciated both of your responses. And the next question that I actually had was, I know we are talking about third parties, but since we're doing post-election analysis, we did just see Harris lose by, I think it's almost 4 million votes. And the first time in 20 years, a Democrat has lost the popular vote, which is unheard of. So if we're just doing analysis of the two candidates that were running, why was it that Harris lost by such a huge margin when the Democrats, whether they are or not, basically have the PR of being, representing the working class, representing the minorities, representing the Muslims, representing, the Black community? Why do you personally think that they failed so miserably after we saw all the rhetoric from Trump, as well as the first 4 years that we went through with his, term?
Brother Salim?
Well, there's a total disconnect, been a total disconnect between the Democratic Party and Black people for decades. Originally, the Democratic Party was the party of the Ku Klux Klan. And somehow it evolved to give us the illusion that it began to be in the interest of Black people. That's all a facade in my personal opinion. Secondly, we look at some of the actions of Biden and the Democrats in recent times. They have given billions to Ukraine. They continue decade after decade to give billions to Zionist Israel. But when the subject of reparations for Black people comes up, suddenly that gets pushed in the background. I don't consider any politician to be. One of the things that Brother Malcolm said in the book By Any Means Necessary, he said that if we're going to support any candidate or any party, that we must only do so, or first do so, when they have demonstrated that they have the sincere interest of our people. And neither, in my opinion, neither the Democrats nor the Republican, Biden, Kamala, or Trump has demonstrated any sincerity towards Black people. That sincerity, in my personal opinion, would first begin with the support of the reparations movement. So no, I don't see any I don't see any legitimacy in either party or either candidate. And I think that Black people in particular are in trouble, with the election of Trump, and we still would have been in trouble even if Harris had got in.
Yeah. Art, what do you think piggybacking on Hina's question about the election, what do you think the weight of the genocide in Gaza cost Vice President Harris and her inability to move away from Joe Biden on that issue?
Well, I think that, we have to look seriously at the genocide going on in Gaza as something that can be transposed very easily to Sudan, which is a tremendous genocide going on there that nobody's even talking about right now. There are wars going on all over Africa that affect Black people and affect people who look like those in the northeastern sector of Africa that Palestine actually falls in and falls under. But very easily, the genocide that's going on in Gaza can be transposed to Detroit, Harlem, Chicago, any place in America. And that same exact thing can be happening by the same forces if you really think about it and understand what you're seeing. So yes, while we stand in direct opposition to what is going on in Gaza, we should be doing so with an eye towards understanding that that could be happening right here in America. So again, the same forces are operating, the same exact forces are operating here in the U.S. that are operating in Zionist Israel right now. So we have to be concerned. That needs to be top of mind. We should not be allowing anything to go forward in this country until that situation is ceased and stopped. And we need to address that. As Black people, as brown people, we need to be standing up and on the highest pedestals that we can stand on and screaming at the top of our lungs that this needs to stop, and it needs to stop now. So that's the relationship that I see there. But you know, to go back and try and analyze and dissect, you know, what happened to Kamala in this election is really unimportant. It's not an exercise that I would like to engage in, simply because it's a futile exercise. She didn't mean that she didn't have anything in the first place for Black and working people and people of color in this country genuinely. That's why she couldn't state anything. And that was part of the reason why people couldn't connect and couldn't commit to vote for her. Of course, Trump was out there pronouncing these things as though he was going to do it, but he'll say anything if you wind him up and point him in that direction. So this is the kind of laughable thing that we have to deal with. So I just don't. We can't really take what's happened seriously, and we do have to move on. If this is not a wake-up call for Black people in this country, brown people in this country, people who are from other parts of the world, of the global South in this country, I don't know what will. We have to get very assertive, and we have to get on the march, and we have to do that right now.
Yeah, and excellent analysis there. And I think 3 things on that point to add to what you said, Art. From my perspective, what the failure of the Democratic Party, and particularly with the face of identity politics, the color of her skin around Kamala Harris, and the butt whooping that was administered by Donald Trump. What it shows is diminishing ethos and influence, and really the desperation of the Black petty bourgeoisie and a stranglehold over Black people. Right, that is waning rapidly, which will allow a vacuum of leadership to appear that the Black radical tradition has to move into. And what do I mean by that? I always like to point to Brother Salim, what happened in Gary in 1972. Well, 10,000 independent Black delegates came from all around the country for 3 days. And at the host of Mayor Richard Hatchard, they were able to put together a true Black agenda. And you know, this Gary declaration of Black politics at a crossroads. And I talked with WAHAD and WAHAD about the resurrection of Gary 1972. He said in his strong analysis of it that it has to be expanded to include the entire left, right? And as we see the rise of the Green Party, the rise of Claudia Dela Cruz, and also with Dr. Cornel West, there is an opportunity, at least to address in a domestic way this return back to 1972. But at the same time, we have to address what happened in 1972 that caused the failure and the crumbling of that Black Power movement. And essentially, what we saw again, the Black petty bourgeoisie, led by Reverend Jesse Jackson, co-opted that movement and moved it into the Democratic Party, and paid well for that, right? So we have to look at the lessons, if you will, of the past that caused those failures, and at the same time, as DHORUBA WAHAD had said in his analysis, to expand that to include a new left movement, a true left movement in this country, at least to deal with the right now stuff, right? And then as we look at art, new analysis of global revolution. So, Hina, anything else?
Yeah, I actually had a really big question for all three of you. So please answer as you want. But there's been what I've noticed, and I've talked to Malik about it, is after the election was over, there's been a really, really big backlash with, the Black community, predominantly white liberals, against the Latino community and Muslim community, which is ironic because a big portion of Muslims are Black. But there's kind of been this discourse that anyone who didn't vote for Harris, and that includes people who voted for Jill Stein, other third parties, people who didn't vote or voted for Trump, are now considered quote unquote backstabbers, sellouts, didn't vote in the best interest of their own people. So there's this discourse by liberals, essentially, regardless of race, where they're saying, okay, you know what, if you didn't engage in voting for Harris, now those Latinos deserve to be deported. Muslims deserve the Muslim ban. It's gone as far as people saying, hey, you know what, as a byproduct of this, Gaza deserves to be flattened. We're just going to go drink Starbucks now. If there's such a big divide now with all the the Black people, the white people, all the people who essentially voted for Harris, is that now going to hold some sort of barrier to building this independent third party, or even piggybacking off of any that exist, like the Green Party, PSL? There's a multitude of others. Is that going to now pose a challenge because there's now a big divide amongst minorities?
Let me jump in just real short, and I'll be short, and I'll let you and Salim get in. I just want to set the tone for this, and that is Dr. Conrad Worrell, the late, great Dr. Conrad Worrell of the National Black United Front, said this, that we have entered, he said this in 2019, that we have entered because of social media, an age of anti-academia and anti-intelligence, right? So these platforms across Twitter and Facebook or whatever, everybody has an opinion, which is the lowest form of intellect. This is the first time in the history of our struggle and our sojourn in America over the last 400 some odd years that people with these kind of opinions have been able to force their way into the space of one of the scholars who set the specifications for revolution in the Black radical tradition. So this is the noise that we hear. It's emotional noise. The last thing I want to address on this is the Black Muslim community, particularly the Black Sunni Muslim community out of Imam Wardi Muhammad's camp in this country, who dropped the ball on the Palestinian struggle in August prior to the DNC, when it was announced that Kamala Harris, vice president, was going to run for president. And they literally left the Palestinians out in the sway, and the Palestinians had their grievances over this. They saw it loud and clear, right? And now that Kamala Harris has lost, overwhelmingly, they have nowhere to go. They played themselves out of position, right? Because struggle is struggle, right? And if you're going to gaslight Palestinians and tell them that they should vote for the person who financed, who was the vice chair over their genocide, because of what? No, it ain't. That is totally ridiculous. And they'll get over their emotionalism, and they'll go back to doing their little social media talk in that space of anti-academia and anti-intellectualism.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It's an attempt to divide and conquer, as usual, and that's what the system does, especially when you recognize that white supremacy is the driver behind this. It's the driver behind Trump's entire movement, the whole MAGA movement. The two principal groups that voted most heavily for Donald Trump were white men and white women. Those were the people who put him in office, and those are the people that you need to lay the blame for his existence, for his survival, for his ethos, for his nonsense, lay it at their feet. Now, they do have some very interesting applications of how to use him. He's talking about challenging the deep state and challenging BlackRock and challenging, actually abolishing.
I think you meant abolishing income tax.
Yeah, and also abolish income tax. So I mean that kind of rhetoric gins up a lot of activity among a lot of people. But again, it doesn't involve our struggle and what we're going through until that's boiled down and synthesized down and taken care of by those people. But this has been a white supremacist movement that is successful. They are the ones who are gloating all across the boards, and if they can turn around and make the rest of us feel guilty or feel suspect about what they've been able to do, I think that they'll jump at the opportunity to do it.
And before we bring Salim in, the Republican Party is and the MAGA movement is a white supremacist movement. The Democratic Party with Joe Biden, Barack Obama, and this time around Kamala Harris is a white supremacist movement in drag. Brother Salim?
The only thing that I have to say in response to this question is we have to understand as Black people that the vote will never be a panacea as a solution to the problems that we have spiritually, politically, and economically. Question I would ask is, can our vote stop a war? Can our vote stop police brutality? Can voting stop racism? It hasn't done it. Again, in 50 years of my voting, I haven't seen, I'm not telling people not to vote. I'm just simply advocating, as Brother Malcolm said, to vote only for candidates who have proven the best interests of the Black community. Now, one of the things that I also believe is that Black people have to stop being influenced by fear voting. You got people among us in the media in particular, like on WVON radio here in Chicago, they will beat you up if you say that you're not going to vote. Even if you decide not to vote because none of the candidates satisfy your interests. So I refuse to be a victim of fear voting. And let me point out that, when they try to come at me and they say things like, well, our ancestors died for the right to vote, often I reply by saying, our ancestors didn't just die for the right to vote. They died for freedom, justice, and equality. And the vote hasn't delivered that yet, you see. So, again, we have to stop allowing ourselves to be, bullied and badgered and voting for the lesser of the two evils. As a Muslim, the Quran teaches me not to be for any type of evil, whether it's more evil or the lesser of evils.
Yeah. Before I turn this back to Hina, I just want to break here. We are on the Muslim Street, our weekly podcast broadcast. We have with us from Chicago, Salim Abdul Khalik, and also from the Darfur 23 in Phoenix, Arizona, Art Mobley. Hina?
Thank you. No, I've appreciated all your answers, especially because seeing the divide going on right now, personally being attacked by a lot of liberals left and right, it's been really overwhelming. But I agree. I absolutely agree with your answers because I think conquer and divide has evolved, and this is like a form of it. Because as long as we have, liberal minorities fighting amongst other minorities when both sides are equally oppressed, they're going after other people who are oppressed. They're not going after the oppressor. I thought it was really interesting that liberals are going after minorities who are already going through so much, like the Arab community, the South Asian community, the Muslim community, the Latino community, as opposed to realizing that essentially MAGA was built to, help the white community. It was a symptom of white supremacy. And that's where the problem lies. So as opposed to taking it to the root of the problem, they're essentially saying we're all being marginalized, but because you didn't quote unquote vote for the lesser of the two evils, which is still evil, which is still oppressive, they're scapegoating people who are in the same position as them, which is, I think, being honestly like very intellectually dishonest. I think it's also a form of cognitive dissonance. So it was great to hear, your thoughts on this. The next question that I actually had was in terms of foreign policy. Now that we are going to say bye to the Democratic administration in about 2 months and we have Trump coming in, do you guys have any thoughts in terms of where, what direction he might go in? We have a war going on, between Russia and Ukraine. We are funding Ukraine. We have the situation going on right now, of course, with Palestine and Israel. We're funding Israel. And of course, we have a multitude of, sanctions, embargoes. We have proxy wars going on. Do you think under Trump it might potentially change? Do you think it'll remain the same? So, just the floor is all yours.
Yeah, I'll jump in and say, and again, just very quickly before we bring our guest in, Donald Trump has done something, quite interesting. He surrounded himself with former Congresswoman out of Hawaii, Tulsi Gabbard. He's also surrounded himself with Bobby Kennedy Jr. These are, not only former Democrats, but these are anti-war people, right? Tulsi Gabbard does an extensive 2-hour lecture on the military-industrial complex, these perpetual wars. So I think as we see Donald Trump's next steps, he's a businessman. He doesn't understand this this whole politics around war. So I think that he'll check off Ukraine. Zelensky shows up here every 3 months. I don't know if you guys noticed that, to get his check, right? Imagine when he comes 3 months in office to Donald Trump and say, hey, where my check at? You're going to tell him to get lost, right? Mm-hmm. So at least in his recalcitrancy of the white supremacist movement, this whole thing about being anti-war as a we should get something out of that, because we have to be honest about this. We don't know what Kamala Harris would have done. We know what Kamala Harris was the vice chair of and what she did. And that's that 250,000 Palestinians lay dead in Gaza. We know that the Sudan is up in arms. We know that Modi in India is committing a genocide on the Muslims there. So we don't know. But he don't have to do much for it to get better. But his anti-war stance and the people that he's signaled by putting around him, Tulsi Gabbard and others, these wars will stop. And but again, the United States aggression and their expansion in terms of their economic breadth will continue.
I think his inclusion of Tulsi Gabbard and RFK and even Elon Musk, for that matter, were an effort to siphon off from the Democrats, in this case, a lot of energy and synergy, and essentially taking some wind out of their sails, giving people a diversion. But again, if things work to stop the war in Ukraine, or it stops weapons delivery to Gaza, I think we should all certainly be appreciative that there's a step in that direction. But what happens to people here? People in this country, particularly poor people, African-American, brown people among them, are sleeping in cardboard boxes and shanties along the roads throughout California, all the way to Florida, all the way to New England, for that matter, because they can't afford housing. Same thing is happening in the area of the, uh, the representation of food deserts all over the place. There's a tremendous amount of toxic inclusion in the foods across the country as well. Plenty of problems that money that is being relieved from war could alleviate here in this country, but will it be used that way? We have no signals of that. We don't have any way to even anticipate whether Trump will be forthcoming with those kinds of solutions. We just don't know. So what we have to do is we need to move that agenda forward. We need to continue to advocate for those people that can't advocate for themselves. And we know what the problems are. We still have to speak for them. And like brother said, this isn't just about having a vote and you vote and it solves problems. The voting doesn't solve problems. Organization solves problems. Activity solves problems. Advocacy solves problems. And so that's where we need to be. And this needs to be, like I said, a wake-up call to get us back to the shock therapy that we have to take care of ourselves. We have to take care of our own people. These people aren't going to do anything for us. None of them. They're not going to do a damn thing for us. So.
So brother Salim, and again, we're here at the Muslim Street, our weekly radio podcast. Brother Salim, the Black Radical Tradition owns the rights to Black Project 2025.com. That's a win. That's a right. Can you talk to us and the audience about how we can best scale that and manipulate that for the good of our people?
What is the question again, my brother?
The Black Radical Tradition now owns the rights to Black Project 2025.com. Literally the platform that will counter all of the fear around the people. Speaking of Project 2025 and the Heritage Foundation, so we have an opportunity just by the optics of that. To create the proper platform in order to scale the necessary advocacy and conversation that we need to grow our points.
Well, let me say this here. I say this all the time. There's no need for Black people to reinvent the wheel. Mm-hmm. We have had leaders, to come to us prior to give us the solutions, the answers, and the directions that we need to travel down in order to get true liberation and upliftment. Malcolm came with some of the answers. Kwame Ture came with some of the answers. The Honorable Marcus Garvey, Elijah Muhammad, all of them had pieces of the puzzle. Concerning the direction that we need to be going. So there's no need to reinvent the wheel. We already have the answers. All we have to do is get busy and implement. And as the brother said, Brother Art, organize, mobilize, and build. You understand what I'm saying? The agenda is already in place. Only thing that there's no need for, I think sometimes we spend a little bit too much time worrying about what our enemies are going to do as opposed to organizing and galvanizing, amongst the plans that we should be implementing, for ourselves. For example, there's a movement right now, or started few years ago, to suppress our Black students getting educated, into their history. And I think most prominent in that effort is the governor down in Florida. I can't remember what his name is right now.
Governor DeSantis.
Yeah, DeSantis. But in response to that, what are Black people going to do? We're going to depend on a white public school system to teach our kids, to educate our kids into the information and knowledge that they're supposed to know. Are we going to get busy in the mosque in the Black community, in the churches in the Black community, in the community organizations in the Black community in the time that we have available to teach our children what they should know ourselves. You see?
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
you know, again, you know, nobody is coming to save us but us, you know, as has been said in the past by, you know, our wise elders.
Yeah, awesome.
Absolutely.
Good point. Yeah, Hina?
No, thank you so much. That actually gave me a lot to think about. And the next question that I had for everyone is not to take away from Black liberation or Black movements, but since this is the Muslim street, what can we collectively do as the Muslim community, as an ummah, to kind of unite? I think, you know, it's necessary on a global level because the Muslim population, you know, internationally speaking, is going through genocide, sanctions, and proxy wars in literally every single country. But you know, the organizing, the unity has to start here, right? Because we live literally in empire. So in the context of Muslims living in, you know, the Western world, in the colonial countries, but most importantly in the empire, the US, what do we need to do to mobilize? Because that's now bigger than the Black community. We're talking about the Arab community, the Kurdish community, the, you know, Iranian community, the South Asian and Pakistani and Indian community. So what can we do to mobilize at this point?
Yeah, I'll jump in real quick. I think the issue around unity is going to have to be unity as it relates to common struggle, right? Because the reality, especially since 1884 and 1885 and European imperialism, which came into the Muslim world very easily. Right? They accepted that. They accepted that because the Muslims, particularly Sunni Muslims, vis-a-vis their Shia counterparts, were interested in stability, right? Whereas the Shia were interested in revolution. And we've seen that play out even as neocolonialism entered after the colonial period in the late 1950s and the 1960s. It's the same, right? For example, Saudi Arabia and Kuwait, which is owned by the Bushes, and the neocons are not going to be interested in revolution, right? Whereas the Sudanese, and we see this play out with the Emiratis and their financing of weaponry in the Sudan on the opposite side of history. Well, so as we talk about unity in the Muslim world, it will have to be around common struggle. Right, so that's something that the Muslim Ummah will naturally gravitate toward each other, and to give that point credence, it's not an accident that Hezbollah, Shia, right, came to the aid of the Palestinians, the Houthis in Yemen. Shia came to the aid of the Sunnis in Palestine. It wasn't Saudi Arabia who sits on all that oil right there. It wasn't the Qataris or the Emiratis or the Kuwaitis who have a plethora of resources in order to help stop the carnage. Egypt right next door. You know, so all Sunni stability governments only interested in stability vis-a-vis non-Muslims weren't interested in helping. So the revolution nary type of Muslims in the Shia camp who are not interested in stability are the ones that we're going to find ourselves organizing with and finding a common struggle.
Well, there's also, Malik, an overlap going on internationally between what is happening in Africa and what is happening in the Islamic world, the Muslim world as well. And we need to have synergistic support for each other in that arena. I mean, it was the South Africans who used the IEC and the International Court of Justice to really go after Bibi Netanyahu and the Zionists in Israel, to take them to task over what they were doing in Gaza. That wasn't the Kuwaitis or the Emiratis or anybody from Saudi or any other place who did that, who took that initiative to do that. But this is how we have to symbiotically start to help each other. Africa is on a move towards continental unity. I think that internationally, Muslims have to understand that African unity is a very, very necessary step in order to move Black people into a state of congruence with the rest of the world. Africans don't have a homeland. We as African Americans don't have a homeland because it's fractured, it's colonized. We sit here in a very fractured state of homelessness because of that reality.
Yes.
And we've got to get beyond that. And Islam and the Muslim community can be a big supportive help in bringing that to the fore. I mean, you got China. China's run by the Chinese, and India is run by the Indians, and Russia is run by the Russians. That land base in and of itself gives them the power to do what they do internationally. The U.S. has got a captive North America, and Australia is captive. Canada is captive. We're looking at the most powerful countries in the world, but they're powerful because of land mass, sheer land mass. Africa, when it becomes one unit, not a bunch of 58 fractured units, will be a very powerful force. I mean, you can't even fathom a more powerful force than Africa will be once Africa unites as Kwame Nkrumah and Muammar Gaddafi and Sankara and even Marcus Garvey envisioned. We need to still press that vision now more than ever. It's the most helpful thing that can really solve the problems of African Americans. I don't look to Kamala Harris or anybody in this country to do a damn thing to change the trajectory of my life and of my children's and grandchildren's lives. But I do look at Africa as a way to solve that problem very quickly. So we need support from the Muslim community to get there. And I think that's a good place for us to kind of really spend some time giving some serious thought to.
Excellent analysis. As we close out this program, I got a few more minutes left. Again, this is the Muslim Street podcast. You can find us at www.themuslimstreet.com. You can find articles there on liberation, etc. And I think Art's written there, Brother Salim is written there, and others. Also, Brother Salim, and then we tell the audience where we can find you at. On the internet, on social media, any kind of shameless plug of any events that you guys might have coming up. We'll start with you, Brother Salim.
Well, I'm on Facebook, and recently got on Twitter. I'm still trying to learn how to navigate Twitter, but here in Chicago, we have Flaming Crescent organizational activities located at 10846 South Halsted on the south side of Chicago. And I can be reached at email Khaliq, KHALIQ 5967 at gmail.com. And we also solicit donations for our organization, because every year we put on our annual tribute to Malcolm X, where we invite speakers, have entertainment, refreshments, etc., in order to honor the legacy of Brother Malcolm. And those donations can be sent to Flaming Crescent Society. Crescent has a S in it. Flaming Crescent Society at gmail.com. Every little bit. Can I just make a couple of points before?
Yeah, we got about 30 seconds.
Oh, 30 seconds. We go ahead and move on to the next person.
Yeah, no, we're good. We can go to overtime. It's no problem.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make the point in reference to the previous question that were asked. I believe that the wars will continue to escalate, in the Middle East and Africa. I think we'll see many false flag operations take effect in order to escalate the wars against Iran and the Palestinians, and continue the division among our African brothers and sisters. And I think it's very important for Black people to become aware of the significance of this, because Black people are going to be asked by the white rich politicians in Washington, D.C. to sacrifice their lives on the behalf of the imperialist and colonialist powers. And let me say this about the Muslims. I don't think that as a whole we will ever be able to unite as a Muslim ummah, because some Muslims are complete sellouts. Some Muslims are complete sellouts in the hip pockets of the colonial conspirators.
Yeah. And Salim, what is that event that you guys do annually around Malcolm X?
That's every February around the date of Malcolm's assassination. We put on an annual tribute to Malcolm X, and we invite various speakers to come out, have entertainment and refreshments, and we talk about the legacy and the philosophy and ideology of Brother Malcolm. We are Black nationalist organization, just as Malcolm was.
And that's up in Chicago, and I hope to be a part of that. And we have to have you back on the Muslim Street or around that. Art, as we close out, what can people find you at? Any shameless plugs? What projects are you working on?
Well, no shameless plugs, but I'm available on the usual places, Facebook and those kinds of spaces as well. But I did want to say one thing in regards to what Brother just mentioned about where these wars are going to go. I would like to submit that as of October 1st and of mid-October, with the attacks on Israel that were launched from Iran and from Lebanon and the damage that they were able to do, that you will not find another attack coming from Israel that will be launched at Iran or anything further than those fields where they feel comfortable. They're going to continue to foment problems in Gaza, and they're going to continue to strike Lebanon until their Iron Dome is shattered again by hypersonic weaponry coming from Iran, which did an amazing amount of damage in Israel. Israel only has a few targets because it's a very congested area, and they dare not attack Iran again. They will not do that again. Trump can't make them do that. Nothing on this side of a nuclear war can make them do that. So I think this is an excellent time for people around the world to get mobilized and move forward and voice their objection to the nonsense going on, and continue to try and work at a different level to try and change those structures so that they don't continue to be a problem to us in either Africa or in the Muslim world as we speak.
Okay, that's going to wrap the Muslim Street. Hina, what's up next week?
Well, I was actually going to give closing thoughts and then let you talk about that subject. My closing thoughts actually, and Brother Salim, please correct me if any of this is not correct. But as opposed to giving my own personal closing thoughts, I actually wanted to bring up a very important part of history in terms of Malcolm X. A lot of people say that he was ahead of his time. I think he was right on time. I think we're all just coming to the party and catching up. But in September, I think on September 5th of 1964, Malcolm X had actually traveled to Gaza, had met with members of PLO, and was so moved by everything that he saw that I want to say it was around September 15th, he went to Cairo, and under the Egyptian Gazette, he published, it was an essay called Zionist Logic. And he talked heavily about how Pan-Arabism and Pan-Africanism is very important in terms of like unifying the Ummah. And as a byproduct of Zionism, that hasn't been possible, and it's created a divide. And so he talked heavily about it in 1964, and we're still seeing the effects of that today. So I think the only way that we can have, in my opinion, and based on what I inferred from what Malcolm X also said, the only way we can have a unified Ummah is if we're able to collectively defeat the Zionist entity. The main reason I think it exists, right, in terms of foreign policy and international affairs, is to basically dismantle the Ummah and keep it as separate factions. So
No doubt.
whenever we go into politics, whenever we're voting, politically organizing, having any sort of advocacy, we have to do it as one block, one Ummah. We have to think about Pan-Africanism as much as we think about freeing Palestine, which is also an extension of Pan-Arabism. Sorry for taking 5 minutes. I just thought that was very important to share.
No, that's very, very important point you made. And I think it's very important for Black people to understand the significance of Zionism as an enemy to Black people. When you go into the history of Zionism and Theodore Herzl and the Zionists originally plotted to take a part of Africa. I believe it was Uganda, if I'm not mistaken. Now think about what's going on in Palestine. What was planned to be occurring or happening on the African continent. Not only that, the Rothschilds who funded the original Zionist movement also helped fund Cecil Rhodes. The Rothschilds funded Cecil Rhodes and the dirty work that he did, establishing apartheid and raping the African continent of this gold, diamonds, and silvers. So Zionism is a big enemy of the African people, and I think that this is something that people like Umar Johnson, who earlier said that we don't have a dog in that fight between the Zionists and the Palestinians. He needs to read that article that Malcolm X wrote entitled Zionist Logic, because the statement that he made that we don't have a dog in that fight is very ignorant. When you look at the history of the Black liberation movement, the Black Panthers and other similar organizations always were on the side of the Palestinians. So we need to understand that.
Yeah, so as we wrap up, Salim, very good point. As we wrap up this week of the Muslim Street podcast, next week, I'd like to have Art back and Salim back, as we going to have attempt to have some guests on from the WAHAD movement, discuss political prisoners. We have to discuss the issue around the WAHAD 3. There'll be, of course, Amalia Shatila, Penny Hess, and longtime struggler Jesse Neville, all who face sentencing after being convicted back in September as forming as U.S. citizens convicted of conspiring to act as illegal agents of the Russian government. And that is strictly the stamp of President Biden on that situation. So hopefully we can come back and deal with political prisoners and deal with the issue of Imam Jamil El-Amin, and also Mumia Abu Jamal and others, because this is critical. This whole issue of political prisoners, and I mean these are our soldiers, and we can't forget them, right?
Right.
So reached out to you guys. I'm going to reach out to some of the cohorts over at comrades over at the WAHAD movement to begin to continue to give heightened visibility to this contradiction. Again, I just want to close out the Muslim Street weekly broadcast. I want to thank my brother Salim Abdul.
Thank you. Art
Mobley of the Balfour 23 for joining us, and of course my co-host Hina Lotus. Thank you, and see you guys next week.
Okay, thank you. Peace to everyone.
living the week. Yeah. Yeah.